13.3 Recursive helper methods. So as much trouble as you may at this point be having understanding recursion, and I get it, it's pretty confusing. We're just going to do it more and more and more, and so hopefully it starts to sort of come together. But as much trouble as you may be having with it, imagine how much trouble your program users are going to have if you force them to sort of interact with a recursive problem and or keep giving you, say, parameters of shorter pieces. That's not very helpful for me to use your code, especially if it's recursion, which can be very tricky to read and get exactly what's going on, if I have to sort of interact with it. So it's going to be easier to find a recursive solution if you can change the original problem. So we have your palindrome test from 13.2. It's a little cumbersome. Okay, you don't really want to have to make a new sentence object every single time. You don't have to pass that in. Okay, so what if I just had my one string, my one sentence, and I just checked the indexes against each other as I walked my way in? That would probably be a lot easier. So I could just text the substring of a sentence of palindrome, and I get my start and end index, and I just keep adjusting those. All right, so on page 601, there's no need to construct a new sentence object to represent my sorted strings. I do public boolean is palindrome, int start, int end, and I just keep changing those. Okay, so if start is greater than or equal to end, return true. Get my first and last character, and then check those against each other. Okay, so you should still supply a method to solve the whole problem. That's the one that the user is going to actually see or work with if I was going to mess with your code. So you will have public boolean is palindrome. Okay. And then that returns is palindrome. Palindrome with your start, your sentence, and then that starts working its way down, and this is the one that's recursive. Okay, that's the one you just wrote at the beginning of page 601, and that's the one that keeps calling itself and adjusting the index. So this becomes 1, and this becomes -2, etc., until I meet in the middle. But the user of your code doesn't need to get into that. They need to be able to, using your sentence class, call is palindrome with no parameter. So I just call, sentence my sentence equals new sentence hello there, and then I just call my sentence is palindrome, and it returns true or false. That's the part the user gets to see. Okay, so and then your helper method, which makes everything a little easier. This in of itself here, this is a little tricky because then I have to make new sentences every time, etc., etc. So I modify the problem slightly. I make it easier for me to work, where I just don't have to worry about constructing all those new objects. But I don't have to force the user to give me an index, 2 indexes on a sentence. I don't want to have to do that. So this is not an example of recursion. This is overriding. Sorry, not overriding. That's the last chapter. Overloading the is palindrome method. I have one with a new set of parameters. So overloading is palindrome into is palindrome 2 integers. This one here then is recursive because once it opens, it keeps calling itself. Okay, so sometimes this is a lot easier on the user and on you to come up with a recursive answer that is fairly efficient by just changing the original problem slightly.